Welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to share with you finally my Odd Eyes deck profile that I've been requested for a very long time. Now one thing I'm going to say before we jump right into the list is that I didn't really have enough time to test this last week, so that's why it took a little bit of a delay, as well as just I had a really busy week, so again that's the reason for that. And this list was a lot harder to build than I initially thought. Because with Performable Skull Cobra Joker going to 3, there are some particular things that I needed to consider, so if you have any question about those, let me know in the comments down below. It's kind of just an interesting process of what I did with this, but again, if this is not for your style, that's completely fine. You can let me in the comments down below whether you think a different kind of version of Odd Eyes is working for you. But before we jump right into the video itself, I'm going to remind you that if you want to see more videos like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It's helped a ton. Like I said, let me know in the comments down below what you think, and without further ado, let's jump right into the video itself. Alright, so one final thing I will say before we jump right into the list card by card is that this list is basically less focused on the cool anime aspect as other content creators do, that they like to run multiple copies of Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon and just make the deck more of like feeling more like the anime. I tried to make the best competitive list with the cards that I own. I'm not saying this list is perfect because it probably need more refinement, but I think overall I did like a pretty okay job for the cards that I have, and I do have a little bit of a change for Master Duel. Not a perfect change, but a little bit of a change for Master Duel players to at least get you started. So let's get started with the list itself finally. So starting things off, I'm going to start with the triple copies of Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon, triple copies of Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon, triple copies of Odd Eyes Persona Dragon, and then for our last two Odd Eyes monsters, which are our Odd Eyes monsters, are going to run one copy of Performable Odd Eyes Dissolver and one copy of Performable Odd Eyes Synchron. This is the lineup of Odd Eyes that I decided to run, nothing more than that. I don't think you need to run Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. I think Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon is just unnecessary in so many levels. Like, the card is not like super terrible or anything. Like, I'm not trying to say Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon is like the worst card in the world. You should never run it. It's just really bad. But I'm trying to say that like I didn't really find the room for the card, and it just didn't ever come up. And I rather run a third copy of Persona because Persona is another scale 1, which is a lot better. And it's also just another interruption because its effect to negate extra deck monsters is not the hard ones per turn. So if you have 3 of these, they can only negate 1 extra deck monster. So that's the reason for that. Another reason is because Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon just doesn't really do a whole lot of anything except from the end phase. Yes, it does double damage, but I don't really care about that aspect that much. So there was really no necessity to run that. But if you want to run Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, up to you. Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon, an amazing card, basically a good replacement for Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon himself. Basically, if an Odd Eyes card gets destroyed while it's in the scale, he's able to summon one Odd Eyes monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Which is amazing. I am not going to say that I would recommend to run like million pops for this card, but this card, if its effects goes off, is just giving you the ability to summon Dissolver, Odd Eyes Synchron, Persona, whatever you need from these guys, even another copy from itself for the situation, or even if you just summon a Vortex, it's able to summon a Vortex back from the graveyard, an Absolute Dragon back from the graveyard. It's just really good. Odd Eyes Revolution Dragons, this entire purpose is being here as basically this card to add to your hand any of your Pendulum level 8 or lower dragon monsters by paying 500 life points. Not a hard ones per turn, by the way. And in the scale, if you need to, it can just destroy itself, and then you get a a Synchro, Xyz, or Fusion dragon monster from your graveyard back, and you're getting like a monster reborn. So I think Revolution is really good. Dissolver is actually a lot better in this deck than other decks, in, I guess, my version of Pendulum Magicians and Master Duel, which like was the first deck I built, because this one is just really easy to summon in this deck with this card effect, and then just get an Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon by using him and the scale, which will be Arc Pendulum after you popped an Odd Eyes card, so that's really good. And then Odd Eyes Synchron is just to help us to do some synchro shenanigans sometimes, or give us access to Haki Fibrax, which will allow us to get to our win condition for turn 1 at least. So that's kind of like the entire purpose of the card. But that does it for the Odd Eyes package. Now for the Performable supporters, we have triple copies of Performable Skull Cobra Joker freshly off the ban list, 3 copies of Performable Pendulum Sorcerer, and then the 1 additional copy of Performable Celestial Magician. Now these are all supposed to be the additional level 4/good scales that you can run in the deck /good cards that you can search. Performable Celestial Magician actually could be any performable monster you can think. If you can think of a performable level 7 pendulum monster that is good in the deck, you maybe can run that if you want to go into the more odd-eyes aspect of things, but I think this just does its job. It's also just a searcher during the end phase, so that's kind of nice. And it's better than Odd-Eyes Pendulum Dragon because it's also a monster that you can normal summon, unlike that, and it's a monster that you're going to basically summon to your field rather than put in your scale, so I felt like this just does a better job. Plus, there is so many times that I wanted to pop 2 cards, and Pendulum Sorcerer was not compatible because it cannot search itself, and I wanted to get the Dissolver to my field with Arc Pendulum Dragon and not get it to my hand if I want to pop 2 cards. So, I just decided to run an additional performable name, so Odd-Eyes performable Pendulum Sorcerer will be able to pop 2 cards. One of them is Odd-Eyes, then I'm getting a Dissolver to my side of the field, and I'm also getting 2 Searchers for next turn, which is really, really good. Performable Skull Cobra Joker, just your best normal summon of the deck. I am super happy that this card is back. It's also a scale 8 if you need to, but this deck has a lot of high scales. The problem is actually low scales, which that's why I'm also running 3 copies of Pendulum Sorcerer. Plus, like I said, it's an easy way to trigger your Arc Pendulum Dragon. And then, for the additional monsters that are helpful, we'll run 2 copies of Dark Worm, 1 copy of Gate Zero, double copies of Curtain Raiser, and 1 copy of, again, freshly off the ban list, Astrograph Sorcerer. This card is definitely amazing, not as amazing in this deck, or, you know, compared to the TCG version of Pendulum Magician, or compared to the Odd-Eyes version of, Master Duel, because Master Duel have access to Electromite, which we'll talk about the changes for that when we'll get to it. But this card, when it triggers off, it's just a free special summon to the field. It's a level 7, it works, and it's giving you another search if you have another particular target in the deck for the search, so that is really, really good. Curtain Raiser, it's a free special summoner out of your scale. We sometimes need those to go into a Link monster before we Pendulum Summon. And then we have Dark Worm and Gate Zero to just have a card that we can just send to the graveyard with Foolish Burial, or Dragon Shrine, and then you just special summon itself to the graveyard, search for us a scale that is low that we can get with a greater ease, so that's why I run 1 copy of Gate Zero. I could consider running a second copy of this just because I need a low scale sometimes, but I think with Pendulum Sorcerer, we do have enough low scales right now, so Gate Zero is just fine at 1, but again, you can do whatever you feel necessary. And then, for the last 4 monsters. The 4 monsters left are not Pendulum monsters. They're monsters that are just supposed to help the deck as an overall. We have 1 copy of Destrudo, the Lost Prism, 1 copy of Artifact Scythe, and then 2 copies of a tuner that is not a Pendulum monster, Effect Veiler. Now, the reason for these cards is pretty simple, actually. Destrudo is another Foolish Burial good target in the case that we do see Dark Worm, and we do have Dark Worm as our normal summon. We do want to use Destrudo as our Dragon Shrine Foolish Burial target, so we can just get it from our deck, then make a level 7 Synchro if we need to, or give us the access for Haki Fibrax, which then summon this directly from our deck if we don't use it as our first thing, because this is a effect tuner monster that is not Pendulum. And it's actually really important because the Pendulum monster will go to the extra deck, and if we want to make an Appaloosa before we Pendulum Summon and before Nibiru and everything, we can just summon this back with a Selene. Plus, it's just a hand trap, which is really good. I want to run this card at 3, but I think at 2 is enough. And then Artifact Scythe, this is a win condition that you can bring out with a greater of ease in this deck. Like, even 2 level 4 Pendulum monsters is just really just easy to bring this out. You bring the Dagda, you just Pendulum Summon those back, you use them as to make a Tornado Dragon, and then you just, like, set this card because you just activate Pendulum Scales or something and trigger the effect of Dagda, set this Tornado Dragon, you're able to value yourself another turn, which is absolutely ridiculous and I think works in this deck favor. But that does it for those. So, monster lineup, pretty big. I hope I explained it properly and fast enough because I think I actually just did this in like a pretty small amount of time. But yeah, now we'll move on into the spells. So for the spells, we have first off 2 copies of Sky Iris, 1 copy of Terraforming, and then 3 copies of Spiral Flame Strike. These are our copies of spells that are related to Odd Eyes. Basically, Spiral Flame Strike, its entire idea is just help you get Arc Pendulum Dragon from your extra deck or your deck to your hand, Or if you need to in a pinch and you control an Odd Eyes card, you could pop your own Odd Eyes card to trigger your Arc Pendulum, or pop your own opponent cards. It's also not a hard ones per turn card, which is amazing, so I do like to run this card at 3. Terraforming is here to search the Sky Iris. You could run 3 Sky Iris and Terraforming, or 3 Sky Iris regardless, but I felt like I don't really want to see this card more than 2, and a Terraforming, which is like 3 copies in total, because it's a hard ones per turn. So, yes, it's a good field spell, but I don't think I want to just, like, maximize on it. If you want to maximize on that, that's up to you, but I felt like Sky Iris is good at 2. It's also just a great searcher. You pop a card, and then you search to yourself a Performable, Odd Eyes, or a Magician card, or should I say, like, sorry, an Odd Eyes card from your deck to your hand. It does protect your Performable, Magicians, and Odd Eyes cards in the scale. That's what I meant to say. But basically, you pop a card in the pendulum scale or on your field, which sometimes can trigger your arc if it's an Odd Eyes card, and then you search an Odd Eyes card from your deck to your hand, which is absolutely amazing. So this is basically your main trigger for your, well, I guess, Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon. And then for the last 6 spells, we have 3 copies of Duelist Alliance, double copies of Dragon Shrine, and 1 copy of Foolish Burial. These are the last few spells. You can change these however you want to. Unfortunately, Desires is at 1, so I'm not going to run that. But again, Duelist Alliance, we have 6 targets in the deck with Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon itself, and Pendulum Sorcerer, which I actually want to see in my hand. So if I do have an access to Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon, I will get the Sorcerer, because Sorcerer might be able to active the Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon with a greater of ease, so that's why I want to see it. Dragon Shrine and Foolish Burial is for Destrudo and Dark Worm, and that's kind of their entire purpose. Now again, you can change your list however you want to, but I think like these consistency spells have been working really well for me. But that does it for the main deck. That's pretty much it, 40 cards. Now we'll move on into the extra deck. And for the extra deck, first off, we're going to start with the only fusion monster we have, Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. Honestly, just an easy monster to bring out in this deck. You can make 2 level 7, make an absolute link it off, summon this, or you can even summon it properly with a Dissolver. This card is absolutely amazing, and it just, basically the card just is your main Omni-Negate of the deck, if you're able to bring it out. Then for your Synchro lineup, we have 3 Synchros, which are TG Wonder Magician, F.A. Dawn Dragster, and Barony the Fleur. Honestly, I don't really bring Synchros often, actually. I mostly use even like Odd Eyes Synchron or stuff like that for more of like my, Haki Fibrex stuff. And even then later, I just use them maybe in scale to make some particular other things, or just use them for like link fodder. The option of like maybe running another synchro just in case, maybe a synchro level 9, actually crossed my mind, but I didn't really think it was that necessary, so that's why I decided not to do that in the end. But the point is, these are the synchro monsters you want to run. Don't worry about it, Master Duel players, you can just run Rowdy Rose Dragon instead, just as an instead card of this. I think this is just a good card because we can also summon it with a greater ease for us. And if you do have Odd Eyes Dissolver in scale and Odd Eyes Synchron on the field, you can just make this like that, and that's it. So this is really, really good. But mostly you just make this with a TCG Wonder Magician during the opponent's turn with your Artifact Scythe. So that's why that's really, really good. F.A. Dawn Dragster, you have Destrudo, you have your Persona Dragons as well. With Odd Eyes Synchron, you can make an F.A. Dawn Dragster, which is on Omni-Negate, or should I say not an Omni-Negate, a Spell and Trap Negate. So that's really, really good. And then for our Xyz, we have 1 copy of Dweller, 1 copy of Tornado Dragon, and 1 copy of Absolute. Basically, these are your other end of the spectrum where it comes to what I call Tornado Dragon, because if you don't have the access for TG Wonder Magician, Tornado Dragon is the next best thing to help you pop the Artifact Scythe and then lock to your opponent. Abyss Duero is another rank 4 if you're able to bring it out, and Absolute, it's just a good card during the battle phase sometimes as well, and if you link it off, it does give you an easy access to a Vortex Dragon if you need to, or any other Odd Eyes monster from your extra deck. So for example, if you have an Arc in your extra deck, you could summon it out regardless of anything. So that's actually kind of cool. And then for the rest of your monsters, these are links. We have 1 copy of Heavenly Spheres, 1 copy of IP, 1 copy of Dagda, Haki Fibrex, Selene, Unicorn, Appaloosa, Boral Sword. These are the link monsters that I decided to run. This should be for Master Duel players an access code if you have access for that as well. Although Boral Sword does good as well in this deck, because sometimes you do use the Hacky Firebreaks as your turn 1, and I don't recommend to run like a second Hacky Firebreaks and a second Selene for just specifically Access Code, but that's up to you if you want to do that, because the deck is a little bit more tighter than Pendulum Magician where it comes to that. Sounds weird, but it is. And, you know, I just think like this is just good enough. Boral Sword just does its job. Appaloosa is just your interruption if you're able to bring it out. Unicorn is a spin. Selene is a free special summon if you have free spells overall in your grave and your scales. And it just revive back your Effect Veiler, which is our spellcaster target, which we also use for Crystal Hacky Firebreaks to bring out if we need to, which is kind of good. Dagda is basically Dagda, bring out your artifact Scythe. IP is, if we need to, we just link into it during the opponent's turn, bring a unicorn, and still get a spin. And Sphere Mode, if we are not getting into the Dagda, but we're still able to get into some additional interruptions with our more dragon stuff, we are going to go into this, and this is going to give us a Persona and a Bounce during the opponent's turn, so it's still 2 interruptions with 1 card, which is amazing. So that's why I like the copy of Sphere Mode as well. But that's pretty much does it for the list itself overall. But for Master Duel players, there is a particular change that I will make. So for the extra deck, I would recommend to cut the IP Masquerena, as well as cutting from your main deck the copy of Darkworm, because Darkworm is basically a card that is banned, or should I say not banned, but on the ban list for 1 in the Master Duel. And instead of these 2 targets, I would run the copy of Electromite and the copy of Chronograph Sorcerer, because Chronograph Sorcerer is a little bit better in this list of the deck, because you are able to get it with Electromite into your side of the, or should I say your extra deck if we need to, although you get the Astrograph, and just Electromite is the card that I wish this deck had, and if it had this thing, that, like, you know, Electromite, then the deck would be absolutely amazing, but unfortunately Electromite is still banned. Maybe it will come back soon, although I doubt it, because we are going to get beyond the Pendulum, which probably is the Link monster they want to push. So maybe we're going to wait on that, but maybe not, who knows. Maybe next ban list we're going to get it. And then the other options of cards that you could cut technically if we don't have the money for them or you don't have them in Master Duel is Berani de Fleur. It is an option to cut down, as well as you can cut this for an access code as well. So these are the options of cards for Master Duel players. I hope this was explained enough for you as well. But that's pretty much does it for the list as an overall. Hope you enjoyed, and it's essentially just helped you learn something. This deck is really fun. It does need some work, and it's definitely, with the new support, I think in Dimension Force is going to become a little bit better. But I think overall, it's fun, it's cool, it can OTK, it can lock your opponent, it's just a great time. So that's pretty much does it for the list overall. Now let's move on into the next deck choices. Alright, so for the next deck choices, we have the 3 returning options from last week, which I believe are Lyrilusk, I think? If I remember that correctly. Lyrilusk, Pendulum Magicians, and Cyber Dragons. And the actually fourth archetype that I'm going to throw into the mix is a one that I didn't do for a while, and that is Ancient Gears. So let me know in the comments down below which one of these 4 you want to see next in the next video, because I will be very, very excited to do any of them. But yeah, that's pretty much does it for the list, and that is for the deck profile as a whole. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you do. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.